Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. I want to give a big shout out to all of our WNST sponsors who have been incredibly supportive and also new sponsors. Big shout out to our friends at Wise Supermarkets. We are now having Wise conversations. I feel like they've always been Wise conversations around here, but that's WEIS. And we're going to eat better. We're going to spend less. We're going to be telling you more about nutrition and about all of our friends and all the Wise stores that usurp the Mars stores. It used to be in Dundalk and all throughout the area. So big shout out to our friends at Wise. We're telling you more about all of that as we get up on Easter and Easter egg. I got a T-shirt for that. Luke Jones joins us now, and these are not purple-tinted glasses, Luke. I want you to know they're more of a blue, not really a purple. Although John Harbaugh did accuse me of having purple-tinted glasses on the Tuesday Zoom. I guess it was good to hear from Coach. Good to hear from Eric DeCosta. You can find that out at BaltimorePositive.com. Hear it on AM 1570 as well. Feels like football season, right? Didn't feel plaguey other than the Zoom part of it, right? Which I guess we all feel plaguey. But it feels like they're running the football team out there as we expected. And, no big droppings of news out there. But, what we're used to being out in Indianapolis, we got on Tuesday, right?
Yeah, that was kind of the substitute for what you see in Indy, where usually how the Ravens always did it for years with Ozzie Newsome and John Harbaugh, it was one or the other who would speak at the Combine. So it was nice to hear from both. As you mentioned, nothing terribly earth-shattering. Eric DeCosta didn't tip his hand, but I think he alluded to the fact that what we found out later in the day on Tuesday, that the Ravens weren't going to franchise Matthew Judon or Yannick Ngakoue. I think most of us had assumed that, considering the price to tag Judon around $20 million, and Ngakoue right around $16 million, and where the Ravens are with this uncertainty about the cap, but knowing it's going to be much lower than it was a year ago because of the pandemic, that just wasn't going to be cost effective for them to do that.
Somebody really going to give Matt Judon $100 million? I don't think so.
I mean, 100 probably not. 75 or 80. You see guys that have left Baltimore and gotten big deals elsewhere in that edge rusher category, whether you're talking about a Zadarius Smith who blossoms in Green Bay, or whether you're talking about a Paul Kruger who, never really got any better than he was in Baltimore, and you could argue wasn't as good as his final year in Baltimore. So that's why I think it's always, especially in this day and age, you have to be so careful treading into that edge rusher market. Look, if you can get a 25-year-old Terrell Suggs, or you can get Khalil Mack, or you can get Lawrence Taylor reincarnate, then great. By all means, go out and spend. But you want to be very careful at that position in this day and age where quarterbacks get the ball out so incredibly quickly that you're not paying somebody to be that guy, and he isn't that guy. So I think that's why you've seen the Ravens.
It's like paying a wide receiver. You got to get a quarterback that gets in the ball.
Sure. But I think that's why you've seen the Ravens, and this is very much an analytically driven concept, invest so much in the secondary, because when you kind of look at it, when much nerdier, smarter people than me have looked at this, they've said that consistently coverage more valuable than pressure. And I think that's why we've seen the Ravens invest so much in the secondary, and not to say that they're not going to go out there and sign an edge rusher or two, but are they going to sign someone at the top of the market? Probably not. So
the coverage is how you get the pressure.
Well, you can look at it either way, but the point is,
Tom Brady's getting rid of the ball either way. You're not sacking him.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. Unless you have someone who is so incredible, it's tough. Now, we could certainly look at this and say, well, you cover better on the back end. Quarterback has to hold the ball, then your pass rush gets home. So there is that chicken or the egg element to that. But as it relates, and look, ideally you have both. I'm not saying that you don't care about your pass rush whatsoever, but what have we seen the Ravens do over the last few years under Wink Martindale? They blitz. They scheme pressure. They use a lot of deception. They use false pressure. I mean, they're all different things that they do. And we've seen them be able to have a top 5/top 10 caliber defense in the process without having 25-year-old Terrell Suggs or even an Elvis Dumervil type pass rusher. So they rolled the dice on Yannick Ngakoue. Last year, I think that was a good move to make. It didn't make the impact that I think they were hoping to make. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not going to go out there and sign a bigger ticket pass rusher, but I do think you need to be wise in how you spend, because you can have that guy who has that magical year where he has 12 sacks, but he's really more of a middling pass rusher. You don't want to pay thinking he's going to be something that he just isn't. So I've said for quite some time now, I expect Judon and Ngakoue to depart. Certainly they're going to hit the market at the very least now. I don't think you get in a position where unless it's imminent that you have a new deal, and I have not heard any suggestions that that's the case, you don't tag those guys. They're less than a week away from hitting the market now. They're going to hit the market. Now, to your point, maybe Matthew Judon doesn't have the market that he's anticipating. And that's one reason why Eric DeCosta described this free agent period as very, very uneasy, because of the lower cap, because of the uncertainty that's created here, because of the fact that, it's just a little bit of a different dynamic, to pursue free agents and meet in person and things of that nature that you take for granted pre-COVID. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. But I've said all along, or at least over the last month and a half, 2 months, really since the season ended, if I'm the Ravens looking at what they need on the offensive side of the ball, on the offensive line, at wide receiver, I'm not neglecting edge rusher, but rather than overpaying Judon or Ngakoue, and in my opinion, overpaying relative to what their production is going to be when you look at it in the big picture, I'm much more inclined to see what the Tyus Bowsers of the market are going to make and going to command, and try to come away with a guy like that. Bring back Pernell McPhee for another year, or Jihad Ward. Take your pick of those two. And then I'm looking to draft an edge rusher relatively early in the draft. Doesn't have to be the first round, but certainly not saying that when I mean draft an edge rusher, you're waiting to late on day 3. And that's kind of the way I think I'd go about it. And I'd continue to rely on Wink Martindale to scheme pressure. So I think that's where they are with that. But certainly there are other topics that Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh got into, starting with Lamar Jackson and the contract extension talks, and just when we can expect to see that come to fruition. And I think the overall sense you got there was there's urgency in the big picture, but certainly not I don't think Eric DeCosta is worried about striking a deal with Lamar Jackson here over the next couple weeks.
Well, and the other part of that makes it interesting, I think, from the Jeff Zrebeck and Jameson, asking questions, is he's got his mother, as the agent, right? Like there's nothing normal about this kid, which is one of the reasons nobody wanted to deal with him and deal with mom and sign him up, and he's not a wide receiver and all that. The Ravens have loved him up in a way no one else could possibly love him up. I don't know that saves him money, and I know Eric talked about the luxury cars and whatnot, and that's cool. But it is a different, tender, weird kind of negotiation when you say to mom, he's a $38 million quarterback. Mom gets very insulted, where the agent's job is not to get insulted. This is why I employ lawyers, because otherwise, you get insulted in these things. But it is unorthodox. I'll say that.
Yeah, no question. And that's not to say Lamar Jackson's not going to hire an agent at some point. That's not to say that he doesn't have lawyers that are advising him and his mother. It certainly is a different – well, right. I agree with you. I mean, we've said all along, we've talked about this for years. It's one thing to talk about a rookie contract that's slotted, and maybe there's some dialogue about how the offsets are with the contract, and how it's structured, down to the minutia of it. But generally speaking, whether it's the 32nd pick of the draft, the 16th pick of the draft, the 104th pick of the draft, that's all laid out by the CBA and slotting and everything. So, what Lamar Jackson did there wasn't. That's happened before. There have been guys that were drafted and didn't have an agent, but typically you do hire an agent moving forward. And
well, if you're going to be a guy with $100 million deal, you get an agent.
Yeah. Well, you'll get $100. It's a matter of how much of it's guaranteed, how much is the payout over the first couple years, what's the signing bonus, all of those things.
As Andrew Brandt says, there will be lawyers.
Well, and that's the thing, and I think that's what's interesting. And I did have to laugh, though, when Eric DeCosta was asked about, the Dak Prescott deal and how that impacts. Of course it impacts Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield and Justin Herbert and any other veteran
Deshaun
quarterback.
Watson.
Yeah, any other veteran quarterback that's going to be up for a deal. I mean, when you look at what Dak Prescott got, and look, that was so much driven by the fact that he played on the franchise tag. I understand that, and the fact that Dallas waited. But whenever that happens, that now sets a new benchmark for future negotiations with other players.
As
So,
Joe
uh,
Flacco predicted, someone would
sure,
make more
sure.
than him.
No question. I mean, that of course, especially knowing that while we're talking so much about 2021 being a smaller cap, we know a new TV deal is looming. We know that the cap, whether it's next year, whether it's the year after that, certainly beyond that, the salary cap's going to go up and go up a
And
lot.
here's the weird
And
part. Football
quarterbacks,
has survived COVID in a way that the other sports, we're still talking about baseball and what is
yeah,
basketball and who's watching hockey and, is the race going to happen at Preakness and are they going to play the Masters? Football made it through. They cashed the checks. They did everything. They were a true made-for-television spectacular during a
yeah, the
playoff,
ratings were
right?
much better, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So,
no
like,
question.
the amount of money that it's going to be worth in 23 and 24 and 25, knee be damned, Trump be damned, SOB, all of is ancient history. We got gambling involved now. Vegas has a team. LA's got a team. London's going to have a team, right? Like, all of that's going to happen. There's going to be more money in 23 and 24. And we got vaccines now, too. So we do see the end of the plague. The Players Association, the TV gods, everybody's into this except, the Eric DaCosta having to give the money out. He's the one that doesn't like this.
Sure, sure. And I mean, there's still some question as far as how much more money, but it will be more money. We just, you have to wait to see how it plays out over the next few years to know how much more. But certainly it's going to be healthy from a financial standpoint. But going back to Dak Prescott, I mean, a year ago at this time, the notion of him getting $40 million a year, everyone was kind of mocking that, right? I mean, everyone was saying, oh, there's no way, and he's crazy, and I mean, this guy isn't the best quarterback in the league, and you look at it and
Yeah,
say,
has he
okay,
won a
well,
playoff game?
uh, I'm
I don't think
trying to
so.
think. I think they
The fact that we have to
won.
think about it is incredible
You
to
know
have
what?
that kind
I'm
of country,
thinking
right?
the playoff victory that I'm thinking of might have been one of Romo's final seasons. But going back to that, and look, Dak Prescott's a really good quarterback. Let's be clear about that. But when you talk about leverage, when you talk about what you envision for yourself, what your agent envisions for you, I thought it was very interesting to see him take a 4-year deal. As much as we look at the Mahomes commitment over a decade and it's $450 million, I guess with phony money it was 500, whatever it is. You look at this deal, this is a much superior deal to what Patrick Mahomes just got when you consider $66 million to sign, 75 in the first year, 95 million through 2 years, 126 through 3 years, and then guess what, you get to year 4 and another bite at the apple, most likely, because if you're Jerry Jones or Stephen Jones or the Cowboys, you certainly don't want to avoid, or you certainly want to avoid this playing out in the same way that it did. And he even has a provision where he's not going to be tagged again. So when you look at it from that standpoint, if you're a quarterback and if you're Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or any of these guys, you look at how this played out. You look at how Kirk Cousins played out, where he was on the tag in Washington and then he ends up getting a fully guaranteed deal with Minnesota, albeit only a few years, but that's money in your pocket. It's not this phony money where the team has all the control as you get 3, 4, 5, 6 years into the deal, and suddenly you look at your average annual value and you're no longer one, you're ninth or you're 11th or whatever it might be. So I think you look at the Dak Prescott deal, and to me, and you saw this with Deshaun Watson, he didn't get a 9-year, 8-year deal from Houston. That was a shorter term. I think 4 years he got as well. But I'm looking at this and I'm saying, hey, let's sign a long-term deal. But when I say long-term, I mean 4 or 5 years with more guarantees. There's
But that's more of a
much
real
more
deal.
upside.
Dak Prescott will stop
Well, and that's the thing
probably,
too.
Carson Wentz aside, probably still be the quarterback of the Cowboys in 2023. In year 3 of the deal, he's still going to be the quarterback, or year 4, he's still going to be the quarterback. Whereas Patrick Mahomes, if you really believe he's going to be their quarterback in 2028 on whatever that $42 million fake number is, that it's fiction, to your point, right? This is a real deal, which is very unusual in modern days.
It's fiction, but the difference when you are talking about franchise quarterbacks is the ball is in the team's court at that point to play ball and say, okay, yeah, we will give you a new deal. Now, it's generally bad business to tick off your quarterback, and that's kind of a no-duh statement. But
Yeah, you
the
ask Pete
difference,
Carroll.
right? But the difference here, though, is this forces the team's hand where you don't have those beneficial years, 5, 6, 7 years into the deal, where you have a little more flexibility, and then that's not to say you don't give the quarterback a new deal at that point, but you have that leverage over that quarterback to make your new deal a little more advantageous. Whereas this, after 4 years, it's over.
Well, hang
And
on, though. The Eagles are the cautionary tale to give Carson Wentz all that money and then have to ditch him, right?
yeah, but again, look, I'm not saying that. I guess my point here is we tend to look at these deals in terms of the total money. When I say we, fans, media to a certain standpoint,
Well, that's the headline. The
outsiders.
headline's
We look at
Mahomes
the
got
total
$500
money,
million, right?
but the point here is, if you're a quarterback, you'd much prefer what Dak Prescott is getting here than the deal that Patrick Mahomes signed with the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs have a little more financial flexibility over the next several years with that. And as I said, most likely, yeah, you're right. 4, 5, 6 years from now, they'll go back to the table and they'll strike a new deal. But the difference is the Chiefs will have the overhead of Mahomes being under contract to make that deal a little more team friendly than this case where 4 years from now, Dak Prescott will be back at the table, potentially becoming a free agent and saying, hey, I want another top of the market deal. So I do think it's interesting, this concept of a shorter term deal with much more guaranteed money, much more lucrative in that way. And I think Prescott will be 31, I think, when he's scheduled to become a free agent again. I mean, that's an age where if he's still playing at a high level, he's going to make a lot of money. So if I'm Lamar Jackson, I'm loving seeing this. If I'm Josh Allen, I love seeing this. And I'm I'm much more inclined to say, yeah, give me the Dak Prescott way more than the Patrick Mahomes deal at this point. And if you're a team, yes, I know those deals kind of get phony as you get further down the line, but that still is more team flexibility with those, even when you're trying to strike a new deal, because it gets to be a smaller cap number. It gets to be non-guaranteed money. It gives you more flexibility for outs. Whereas this deal with the Cowboys, I mean, they're paying them a hell of a lot of money over the next few years.
Well, especially against a $180 million cap on a percentage basis, that feels large. Lamar's different in that, unlike Patrick Mahomes, where you can see Patrick Mahomes at 31 still doing what he does, I'm not buying in on Lamar long term anyway. I mean, I am a Lamar guy until he gets hurt, right? Or until he gets old. And because he doesn't throw the ball well enough for me. I mean, period. I mean, not to be disrespectful, we say it all the time. If he threw the ball like Patrick Mahomes, we probably win more games, right? And
but where do you think he ranks as a passer, though?
Again, this is all half-baked when he's running a completely different style and what they're trying to do in their passing situations and they're down in distances. This is the Ravens are so unique in that way, and I think Lamar's unique in that way, that Lamar's not a guy you would look at and say, I'm going to give him a 10-year deal because he's got the skill set of a 10-year deal quarterback. I think he has the skill set of a 3 or 4-year quarterback, providing he doesn't really get hurt, because if anything were to happen to his mobility, I don't want to say he's ordinary. He's less than ordinary if anything happens to his mobility, in my mind. If he I that's how I feel about it, having watched him for years.
But I think the numbers. I mean, I think you're selling him too short as a passer. Now, I'm not saying he's Mahomes. I've never said he's Mahomes as a passer. I think his passing is better than you're giving him credit for. But your general point, I think 3 or 4s. I think that's selling him way too short, considering what this kid's done at this point in his career. I would say more in the line of, let's say, 6 years. So
but
he's
that
24
wouldn't be
now.
Guaranteed anyway. Once you tell me you got a 6-year deal in the NFL, I'm telling you it's
Right.
fake anyway.
But your general point, and this is, I think we're on the same page here, even if it sounds like we're disagreeing.
You want the team flexibility of having money to move around in a 6-year deal.
Always do.
I agree.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I think. And again, even talking about this in terms of the 10 or 12 years for Mahomes, I think it's technically 12 because it was 10 tacked on at the end of his rookie deal. But I think even with that, yeah, your general point, while I'm not saying Lamar Jackson can't have a 12 or 13-year career, I think there is very much a question of what does he look like year 9? Is he a top 5 quarterback still, or is he Joe Flacco at that point where he's middling? And that's where Joe was at the end of his time with the Ravens at best. He was a middling quarterback for a number of reasons that we don't need to rehash. But
Well,
yeah,
Michael Vick was a
certainly
sensation the first year, and before he got hurt, by the time he got hurt, he was a guy who was flawed and thought to be a flawed quarterback at that point. Before
but
the
he came
dogs,
back
before any of that.
But he came back and played in Philadelphia and had played some of his best football for a couple years.
But
So
he
so
wasn't
there's a
Peyton
perfect
Manning or Tom Brady. We're
okay.
we're talking about somebody
but
winning Super Bowls and somebody being a quarterback that's on a playoff team, which is
guy that was a
half
Pro
the
Bowl
league.
caliber quarterback for a couple years. I mean,
I think
you just
Lamar's
kind of
coming into his
your
prime
own
in
point.
that the legs are still there, the intellect is there, the ability to throw the football is
Yeah.
there. All of that, the next 3 or 4 years, he is worth $40 million a year. I'm not ready. I'm much more sold on a traditional quarterback at 30 to 35, and watching the guy who just won be 40 friggin' 3. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where Lamar is going to be at 43, but it's not going to be running through lanes and taking kill shots from linebackers. That's not going to happen because
Tom Brady.
They're going to start catching him when he's 28 or 29.
If we're going to compare anyone to Tom Brady, then I don't even know what we're doing because I mean that's the
Well, that's what you got to beat.
no,
That's
no, it isn't what I mean. He's the anomaly of anomalies. I mean, he's played longer than anyone.
But in any given year, you need to beat that guy, whoever that guy is.
Yeah.
And Lamar's going to be that guy. If he's going to be that guy and we're going to have a parade for Lamar, it's not going to be because he looks like Tom Brady. It's going to be because he drops back to fake pass on 3rd and 6 and takes off and runs 43 yards for a touchdown and laughs at you, because we've seen that happen. When that ability stops, like when Jamal Lewis could no longer run away, like everyone who uses legs, the comparison.
Jamal Lewis couldn't throw though.
Well, you're the baseball guy. The comparison for me would be I see Lamar as more like a pitcher, where I don't want an 8-year deal with a guy with a tendon. And in football, I don't want an 8-year deal with a quarterback who runs a lot, which primarily what the whole scheme is. The whole concept is running. And as much as they want him to pass better, well,
he did lead the league in touchdowns in 2019.
They choose to run.
He did lead the league in touchdown passes in 2019.
Because he ran well. Okay. If he didn't run well,
I mean, I don't know why it's so hard for you to give him any credit throwing the football. He's a way better passer than what you're laying out there right now. He's a way better passer than that. Is he Patrick Mahomes? No. If you look at him from an analytics standpoint and all of those numbers over the last couple years, he's still been like a top 12 passer. I mean, he just has. I mean, you can say he's not, but the numbers say otherwise.
Top 12
numbers
is
say
fine. I mean, I'm not even arguing that. But I'm arguing money and years and totality of career for what when you give someone a career contract. Like when you give Max Scherzer money if his arm
Would you give Lamar the Dak Prescott contract right now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's kind of been my point all along. Shorter term deals are kind of where we're at, and I think it actually behooves the Ravens to kind of lean into that and embrace that. Yeah, if Lamar wanted to take an 8-year deal that has a lower guarantee at the beginning, and then you look at years 5, 6, 7, 8 of that deal, they're going to be very team friendly by then. The guaranteed money's gone by then. Then sure, and you'd be in a position where if Lamar Jackson does have an injury or he does slow down,
and everybody crows Lamar's a Raven for life and all like Flacco was, and he's on.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, there's so much of that's romanticized, and I mean, those examples are just. At this point, if you had to guess, does Patrick Mahomes remain a Chief for life? I'm going to probably say no at this point, because Tom Brady didn't remain a Patriot for life. I mean, that's where we are at this point. I mean, and I'm not trying to disparage any players or anyone for that. I think it's just the reality of where we are in 2021 in terms of the business of sports, and it's trended this way for a long time. For every guy who might stay with one team, I think there's 15 other guys that you would have identified to say, oh yeah, he's a lifer.
Michael Jordan played with the Bullets, dude.
Yeah, the Wizards. I think we all try to forget that. But
Luke Jones is here. We're talking some football. Go ahead and finish your point, man.
No, but I just think I just think it's very interesting to see quarterbacks, and Dak Prescott's a great example of this. Kirk Cousins did this. Want these shorter term deals where the idea of long term security. Who's it security for? It's security for the team, because you get to your point, you get into year 5 of that, and the money's phony from the player standpoint. Now, for the team, it's great. If the player's still playing at a high level, you're talking about a guy who's playing for market from what market was 5 years before. And oh yeah, none of it's guaranteed. So if the guy does have an injury, or if the guy does fall apart, whether we're talking about just declines, because players decline and not everyone's Tom Brady, then the team has all the power there. And even if you negotiate a new deal, because the team has that going for them, they can use that against the player in negotiating a new deal. So that's where, if you're Dak Prescott, if you're quarterbacks, you're loving this. Yeah, a 4-year deal that pays you that much money, $95 million through the first 2 years, when you consider the bonuses and all of that. I mean, that's beautiful. You know you're going to be hitting the market again by age 31, or you're going to have another deal that looks just like this one, only it's going to be corrected then for whatever the market will dictate 4 years from now. So I think the overall point and how that relates to Lamar Jackson is, yeah, I think for all the reasons you laid out, even if we might disagree on some of the details of that, it makes perfect sense to want to invest in Lamar Jackson, but not for an extraordinarily long period of time, 5 years. And then at the end of 5 years, 4 or 5 years, you look at what he is. And by the way, he's improved a lot as a passer from the time he was a rookie to what we saw in 2019. Certainly saw a major jump there. And that's not to say that he can't improve further than that. So, does he look at age 28? Does he pass the ball more like Russell Wilson? We've used that comparison as far as a potential goal for Lamar Jackson if he's going to have a 15-year career. If he looks like that, then guess what? Age 28, you'll probably be more than happy to want to keep him around for another few years and give him another deal. But again, this idea of a shorter term, more guaranteed money kind of deal for quarterbacks, I think we're going to see more and more of this because of what's happened with Cousins and with Dak Prescott, even though both of those were kind of spawned by being a franchise tag situation.
You can hear the press conferences of Eric DeCosta as well as John Harbaugh out in the Baltimore Positive audio repository, and especially at BaltimorePositive.com. Hey, man, rest up. We got baseball ahead. We got Terps this weekend, right? We got March Madness, opening day. Larry's going to open the whole state up. Come on down from Pennsylvania up there, Luke Jones. We're open in Maryland. Open for business. How about that?
I look forward to seeing fans in the stands, however many it ends up being, and I know people have already made the joke over and over that social distancing at Camden Yards was cool before social distancing became a thing, given the crowds. But I'm looking forward to it, and we're getting there. We're not there yet, but we're getting there, and it's going to be fun seeing fans back at the ballpark. And I know John Harbaugh was talking about how he expects a full M&T Bank Stadium come the fall, and whether it's 100% or whether it's close to that, it's feeling more and more plausible that those things can be reality as we continue to ramp up vaccines. Still plenty of work to do, but again, that light at the end of the tunnel, it's looking brighter, and I think it feels much better for all of us.
Well, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary. I'm trying to think the last time you and I physically looked at each other's eyes other than on Zoom. Like, have you picked something up at my condo at some point? Have we been anywhere together? I don't think we have.
The Marshall practice in August.
What was that, in August?
The stadium practice in August. Yeah, the stadium practice.
Oh, it was 150 degrees. We took a picture together.
Yeah, you tapped out after what, 20 minutes?
Dude,
it was very hot that
It was
day.
The first practice. It was a million miles away. Sam Cook and Justin Tucker were yelling at me from the field.
Yeah.
So it's been 6 months since. Wow. All right. Well, maybe April 8th, dude. Maybe April 8th.
We'll see.
Somebody gives me a free ticket, I'm there. It won't be with my press pass. But, Luke, I'll keep working on that John Angelos exclusive as well. So, hey, man, take care of yourself up there. Luke Jones talking all things contract, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, and the John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta words of wisdom. Brought to you by Wise Markets, our newest sponsor around here. Make sure you get out, support them, whether it's Store 84, the original down in Dundalk on Holabird Avenue, between Holabird and Dundalk High School, where my pal Rob Santoni's place up in Fullerton. We're going to get to know all the Wise locations. I know we got them up in Bel Air, got them up in Towson, got them on the west side, the south side, Anne Arundel County. We're big appreciation for their sponsorship, as well as our friends at Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy. I had Bill on this week talking about the getting the shot and vaccines and all that good stuff. My good friend Don Moeller also riding shotgun, our new segment, weekly segment, The Recon, now available out at BaltimorePositive.com. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore Positive.